Hi there. This is Billy Earl Amos, and I am here with Lee Britt on Eastern Shore Politics. He is running for state's attorney here in Wicomico County. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedule. I know with this race coming up as quickly as it is, you probably are scheduled from early morning until late evening.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you for having me. We are keeping a really busy schedule, but there's only a short period of time between now and the primary election date of July 19th, so we're trying to meet as many folks as we can in that time. Thanks for having me.
It's hard to do, isn't it?
It is. It is.
I understand that you're a Western Shore guy.
I am.
I am.
Please don't hold it against me. I have only been here for 14 years. So I grew up in Montgomery County, went to Frostburg University out west in Western Maryland, and then went to Erskine Theological Seminary down in South Carolina.
Really?
Yeah, got married down there,
Okay.
stayed down there for a little bit, running a restaurant, and always had this passion in me to go to law school. I come from a law enforcement family and always wanted to go to law school.
Okay.
So I came back to Maryland to go to law school, was accepted at the University of Maryland in
Good school?
Baltimore. It is a good school. I enjoyed going there. And as I was going through there, my wife saw how much fun I was having in law school. She decided to go to law school as well at University of Baltimore.
Oh, no.
And yeah, we had a little rivalry
Two
between
lawyers
that's
in,
right.
in one family.
Makes dinner conversations very enjoyable.
I suspect.
Or not. So, yeah. I went to law school to become a prosecutor. That was my goal. And so I saw one of the best ways to get into that position was a clerkship. So after I finished law school, I was putting myself through law school as a district court commissioner, working as a district court commissioner, which in Maryland is like the lowest level judicial officer responsible for bail decisions, issuance of arrest warrants, peace and protective orders, things of that nature. And I was doing that in Baltimore City, which was an education.
I bet.
In the criminal justice system, indeed. You kind of got thrown in the deep end. And that was during Martin O'Malley's term as mayor, so it was like the broken window theory. We were very, very busy because the police were making very, very many arrests.
Yeah.
So after law school, after finishing up as a commissioner, I took a clerkship down here with Judge Donald C. Davis, who is now retired, but at that point in time, he was the administrative judge here.
Very
in the
well
circuit
thought
court.
of.
He was great. He's one of the best bosses that I've ever had in my life. I enjoyed almost every single day showing up to work for him. And if you can say that out of the year that I worked for him, there were like 4 days where I did not want to go to work, you're winning. That is winning. And so he was just a delight in how he handled his courtroom, in his demeanor. And so I learned a lot from him. He's one of the 3 people I consider really to be a mentor. And I was hoping to utilize that again to get into the state's attorney's office or a state's attorney's office. And I interviewed at several across the state, but Davis Rourke, who was then the state's attorney, and Sam Vincent, who was the deputy state's attorney, I was able to interview with both of them, and Davis offered me a job, and I took it as quick as I could. And I was,
Good deal.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Worked for Davis for a while. I was learning from Sam Vincent, who was just probably one of the kindest but most fierce trial attorneys I've ever come across. And so Sam was a great influence and mentor to me. As a lot of folks know, there was some division in the office at that point in time. Sam actually filed to run against Davis. And Sam, shortly after announcing that he was going to run against Davis, he and I were coming back from the state's attorney's conference in June of 2010, and we were hit by another car right on Route 50 at 60-foot road in a rollover accident, and Sam ended up being killed, and I survived with some minor injuries, certainly comparably to that. And out of that chaos, Matt Massarello came on the scene, and he ultimately became state's attorney, and I was able to continue with him and worked for Matt for about 6.5 years. And Matt, he was a delight to work for. He was probably, other than Judge Davis, the best boss I've ever had. And during that time, spent a lot of time with the Gang Enforcement Unit, the liaison to the Maryland State Police Gang Enforcement Unit, prosecuting mostly gun and drug crimes, things of that nature. But you know, in 10 years in the state's attorney's office, did everything from speeding tickets to homicide cases and everything in between. So,
how do you like life here on the shore?
You know, I think it's beautiful. So Coming from the other side of the bridge, I candidly did not know a whole lot about this area till I got down here. And then I got down here, been here for, again, about 14 years, and my wife and I have four kids. We're raising them here on the shore, and we've got a great church home. We've got a great group of folks that we know, and we're like 45 minutes to Assateague. So I don't know, as long as I can get a Chick-fil-A and get to Assateague pretty quickly, then my life's pretty well complete. So we love it down here.
It is a beautiful place to live. So here you are, and you've turned your sights on a race that may not be one of the best known, one of the most contemplated on the part of the voter. But if the polls are correct, and an interest and a concern for law enforcement and for public safety are as pronounced as I think they are, people are going to pay attention to this.
Indeed, yeah.
Tell me what prompted you to step forward and do this, because it's a huge responsibility, yep. Especially with 4 kids.
Yes, I mean, so the state's attorney's office, specifically in Wicomico County, is the single largest law firm on the Eastern Shore. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that a lot of folks don't understand is the role of the state's attorney. And so in some jurisdictions it's known as district attorney, in some jurisdictions known as solicitor, but here in Maryland we call them state's attorneys. And each county and Baltimore City has an elected state's attorney that is responsible for the prosecution of 98% of the criminal offenses that occur within that jurisdiction.
Right.
And so everything from the Walmart theft to the home invasion, burglary to homicides are prosecuted right here in Wicomico County by an elected state's attorney and his or her staff. And so it is absolutely fundamentally important within the criminal justice system. Why I'm seeking this role specifically is after 10 years with the state's attorney's office, I left in 2019. And for the last several years, I've really watched as the office that I knew and loved kind of lost touch, really, with its law enforcement partners. And I still have a lot of contacts with law enforcement, a lot of folks that I worked with over 10 years of building relationships, doing trial prep and things of that sort, reviewing search warrants. And I've heard from officer after officer after officer that the communication between the state's attorney's office and their agencies has dissipated and has been broken. And that has also caused trust between law enforcement and the state's attorney's office to be broken. Okay. And as anybody knows who's been alive for more than 3 seconds, trust is really hard to build, but can be broken in an instant. And so one of my goals is to start to rebuild the trust and communication between law enforcement and between the state's attorney's office, because without those two groups working together, it's really difficult to try cases. And I think one of the things that we've seen, it's hard to put it in perspective, but let me try to do it this way.
Go for it.
Sheriff Mike Lewis has a staff of, let's say, 80, 90 sworn sheriff's deputies, all right? If 65 of those 80 sheriff's deputies walked out of the door, just walked out of the sheriff's department, what kind of impact do you think that would have on the ability of the sheriff's office to operate on a day-to-day basis?
Overwhelming.
Overwhelming. And then beyond that, if of those people that you rehire to try to stock the sheriff's office back up, 30 of those 70 people also resign and also walk out the door. It just continues that pattern of an agency always under stress, always coping to deal with the avalanche of cases.
Right.
And that's the sort of turnover that we've seen in the state's attorney's office, where under Ms. Dyke's leadership, they have suffered really unprecedented turnover. Every agency is going to have some retirement, some people leave. But we've had 125% turnover within the state's attorney's office, where Matt Massarello's staff, that was lauded by folks in Annapolis as the best state's attorney's office in the state, of that staff, we've lost everybody except one. There's only one attorney left who worked under Matt Massarello. And so of the best state's attorney's office in the state, only one has remained. And the rest of us chose to leave because of a a toxic work environment where we were stripped of discretion and
Okay.
micromanaged. And it's really sad to see that breaking of that staff up. But it's continued beyond that, right? Where a lot of folks who have been hired by Ms. Dykes have left themselves, and they've chosen to walk out the doors
Right.
because they're coming into the exact same dysfunctional situation that we experienced, and so many of us decided the writing's on the wall. This is not a place that's fun to work anymore. It's not a healthy place to work anymore. So I'm running to stop, to staunch the flow of people, the outflow of good, talented, public service-oriented people. We had a group there who could have been prosecutors for their entire career, and now we've all gone in different directions.
Right.
And I think that the net effect of that is when a police officer is standing on the side of the road, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they have a legal situation that's presented to them, they need to know who their contact is within the
Right.
State's Attorney's Office. And it's right now that has broken down. When you have that sort of constant turnover, law enforcement officer doesn't know who they are calling. They don't know who that person is, whether that person's advice, legal advice, can be trusted. And we see that a lot of times when law enforcement take missteps, there are dramatic consequences for them personally, for the case, for the defendant or arrestee. Right. So they've got to know that they can call somebody and rely on that person's legal advice. And part of the issue is granting that person the authority to make a decision and backing that person up. And that's just not happening. That's not happening. And sometimes it's hard to quantify that sort of issue. But the net effect is when somebody is arrested, it makes it dramatically harder to finalize that case, to push that case through to jury. And we are seeing that in the county. I think we can do better, and that's why I've chosen to run.
Okay. What do you think the first couple of steps that you'll take are going to be?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that I do is I sit down the entire staff, and I actually took a little bit of step in this direction. I want everyone to be clear that they can follow their conscience, right? I'm not going to come dictate to each attorney everything that they need to say or do or think. And so when we got into a contested primary race, which is what this is.
That's right.
Both Ms. Dykes and I are registered Republicans running in the Republican primary. I sent an email to Ms. Dykes as well as the entire state's attorney's office that I had emails for and just said, listen, my only hope and expectation in this race is that you will follow your own conscience. It's a basic fact that Ms. Dykes has hired the overwhelming majority of the people there in the office now, and I said to them, if you want to support her reelection, I'm not going to hold that against you.
Right.
If you want to support me, that's great. If you want to stay neutral, that's fine. You each have to follow the dictates of your own heart. And I want to continue that into the state's attorney's office if and when I'm elected, and empower my staff to utilize the discretion that they have, the wisdom that they have, the education and experience that they've gained, instead of micromanaging and nitpicking, because frankly, the office is just too big for that sort of micromanagement. So I'm going to authorize my people to make decisions, and then I'm going to back my people up. That's one of the first steps. The other is they're going to return phone calls. It's so basic.
I know.
So basic, but it really is a problem among the bar, the criminal defense bar has difficulty a lot of times getting return phone calls and emails, but especially law enforcement. And so when an officer calls, an attorney needs to either answer the phone or give them a call back.
Right.
And so I promised, I had a chance to speak with the Fraternal Order of Police a couple weeks back, and I said to them, here's one thing I promise you. If you call me, I will answer the phone. If I don't answer the phone, I will call you back. If you ask me a question, I will give you an answer. If I don't know the answer, I will find out the answer, and I will give you a call back. And so I think just reestablishing those lines of communication between law enforcement and the state's attorney's office will go very far to start rebuilding that trust.
Okay.
And I don't mean to I don't mean to denigrate any of the efforts of the people who are there now. Again,
Right.
it is a difficult job under the best of circumstances, and the folks there are some great folks in the state's attorney's office who do great work. But when they're not supported in the way that I had the benefit of being supported, my former colleagues had the benefit of being supported under Matt Massarello and some of the other folks who we worked under, it really makes it difficult to do the job. And so I want to, I guess those are the two easiest fixes or easiest solutions, are empowering my people with discretion, and then returning phone calls, returning emails, starting the lines of communication, reopening them with law enforcement.
This sounds like a silly question, but perhaps not. When a new state's attorney takes office, is it typical that there is going to be people that are going to leave for whatever reason?
Sure, yeah. So every time I had served under several different state's attorneys, so Davis Ruark, and then Matt Massarello, when Matt Massarello was elevated to become judge.
Yeah.
Ella Disharoon was appointed as an interim, and then Ella resigned, and Jamie Dykes was appointed as interim, and then one in her own right. But at each time that a new state's attorney is sworn in, the entire staff of attorneys has to be sworn in under that state's attorney.
Okay.
And so the state's attorney can make an election not to bring somebody back. And that does happen, but that's fairly rare.
Right.
There are people who choose to leave in their own regards. That certainly has happened before, but nothing like what we've seen in the last 4 years,
Okay.
especially the first 2 years of Ms. Dykes' tenure. There are people who resign and go. I would hope that the vast majority of
Would
folks
stay
would
and
stay.
be part of the solution.
Absolutely,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I think that they would. But if people want to move on to something else, I certainly wouldn't begrudge them that opportunity. So,
Well, I think for most people that I have known that have gone into the prosecutorial end, I think it was as much a calling as it was anything else.
yes, yeah,
And some of them tried, private practice and just didn't care for it. But they wanted to be, part of a solution,
Yeah.
to a problem. So here, let's assume arguendo just for a second that you do win. You've got a lot to overcome, don't you?
indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. I think it's going to be an incredibly close race, and I think there's a lot of work to be done.
Are you looking for a low turnout?
Well, no, I mean, I want everybody who wants a voice to take charge.
Yeah.
Nothing happens without the voters taking some opportunity to go in and make their voice heard.
Yeah.
And so I think low turnout is, as a democracy, as a democratic republic, that's sad to see. As somebody who likes, the body politic and the way that our country is supposed to operate, that's sad to see. So I guess in terms of voter turnout and the voters' will, I'm a little bit fatalistic in that I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to make the arguments that I think need to be made and let people know what I have seen in my time in the state's attorney's office, what I've seen my time looking out from the outside in, what I think I can do a little bit better. And then the people will ultimately make their decision. And whatever decision that is, I'm okay with it. I'm at peace with it because I've chosen to make known some things that a lot of people just didn't know were happening.
Right. I think you have to have some kind of connection or nexus to the legal community to really hear those kind of things.
Correct.
Otherwise, people are more interested in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Right. That's exactly right. It's a lot, the comings and goings of an office that a lot of people don't even know about or care about is a lot less sexy than what's going on in Hollywood or what is on CNN or Fox News or what have you. But it is vitally important to this community. I mean, I live here. I drive the roads with my family.
You have kids here.
I have kids here. I want to know that when we drive downtown to go out to eat, my wife and I, that we're going to be safe walking to and from the car. When I take my kids to, gymnastics, that we're not going to be hit by a drunk driver. And so these are real life consequences. What goes on in the state's attorney's office has real life consequences for all of us who live and travel through Wicomico County. So,
how many attorneys are in this office?
So I know in my tenure there were 18 attorneys within the state's attorney's office. About that many support staff members. There were 2 investigators. I think now they have 3 investigators. Okay. So it is a large office. It has a budget of, I think, $3.6 million last I looked at the fundings for the budget. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of moving pieces, or a lot of moving pieces within the office. And again, it's just one of those things that people just don't really know about. They kind of take it for granted. But what's happening behind the scenes is really, really fundamentally important to what we see when we go out into the community. And that is, we don't want to see crime and criminality that
right.
Has plagued so many of our, especially larger cities, but it's down here too.
Yeah.
If there's anything that was driven home to me in my tenure with the Maryland State Police Gang Enforcement Unit as the liaison to that unit, it is that violent crime is here, gun crime is here, drug crimes are here, gangs are here. And I think that we need to face that reality. There might be some folks who don't want to do that, but it's here. And
yeah.
denying it only hampers our ability to properly respond and respond with wisdom. So.
Well, it's insidious. It's all over the country.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of size and impact, and then ultimately how we deal with it. Now, this race is going to be decided in the Republican primary.
Correct.
Many people don't look at this as a real important race, and that's a mistake, because public safety is important, and we can't ignore it. We have to pay attention to it. On another front, are you a lacrosse guy at all?
I can't say that I am. My nephews were great, largely into lacrosse, but I myself never got into it. I'm more baseball fan, Orioles fan.
I just like to bring up the University of Maryland. NCAA champions, again. Sometimes the drudgery of campaigning can be difficult, because everybody wants to talk to you when you're at an event. Everybody wants to hear, your view on da-da-da-da. It has been my experience that when people are out there on the stump, that it's a little bit intoxicating, because there's a certain excitement and a certain energy to it, but on the other hand, it can be really grueling.
Yeah.
How are you doing with it?
This is a brand new experience for me. I've never done anything of this sort before. I'm having fun with it.
Yeah.
It is at points frustrating, just because you do have to find that life balance. But I think one of the things, I don't know if you've ever been to like a 5K or a marathon, but in race culture, my wife's a big runner.
Okay.
In race culture, everybody's excited. It's just, it is intoxicating in that sense.
Electric.
And it is electric, exactly right. And so there's a sense within the campaign atmosphere of the exact same thing. And so there is that excitement, or can be that excitement. On the other hand, just like anything in life, if you do it long enough, or if you do it in different spheres, it can become drudgery, it can become work. And so we're trying to maintain the fun aspect of it, going out and meeting people. But there is hard work to it as well. And you just kind of press through those moments where it's a little bit more difficult, and then just move on to the next event. And I've been able to do some great things, like we were at Operation We Care, which Jeff Merritt has put together this amazing foundation. I didn't know really much about it until I got into this race, and people are like, hey, let you meet this guy. And so meeting folks like that, participating in events like that, have been really, really fun. So I've enjoyed that.
When you're out on the stump, what do you think the most common area of query would be for people?
Well, I think that's tough, because I've gotten so many different areas of question, but I think a lot of folks want to know, why are you running right now, right? They don't know a whole lot about the office specifically. why two people would want this job anyway, and why I would want to campaign against somebody in a Republican primary who is the incumbent. And so that's probably the most frequent question is, why now? Why are you doing this? And even starting with my wife, who said essentially, why are you going to try to get a job where you have to work harder with a lot more stress and a lot less pay? Why would you do that?
Right.
And I think it goes back to something you had said earlier, where there's a calling. This type of public service is a calling, and it's something that I grew up again in a law enforcement household, and I have had that surrounding my life. Had family in law enforcement. Mother was a teacher's aide, and so that sort of public service was a part and parcel of my childhood and how I want to view my own life.
What'd your dad do?
He was a police officer.
Okay.
Yeah, and two uncles, police officers, one of whom was actually killed in the line of duty long before I was born. I never had a chance to meet him, but that event certainly had an impact on my family's life.
Of course it would. Of course it would.
So it's one of those things when people ask, why are you running? Well, I'm running because I want to make a difference, and I have seen what the office could be, and the importance of the role that we play, and I see what it is right now, and I think we can do better.
Do people appreciate the fact that you have a formulated vision?
I think it's, first of all, a lot of folks, again, there's a layer of education where we have to explain sometimes, what the state's attorney's office does. And there's a lot of confusion, despite the popularity of Law and Order and CSI and all that. There's a basic confusion about the role.
Right.
And so first, for a lot of folks, it's just educational. And then to go in and to try to differentiate myself from Ms. Dykes is also kind of a challenge, because we're both, fairly conservative people.
Okay.
We both want to fight crime in our community. We both care about the community, but it's just a different vision of how to treat people.
How to carry it out.
How to carry it out. Exactly right.
And that's always the hardest part, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Leadership is a fragile thing, because we all have egos and we all have visions, and sometimes when people don't necessarily share them, it can become a bit of an issue. In addressing your people here, what message do you want them to really grasp and internalize?
When you say my people, are you referring to the
prosecutorial staff?
Right. So I guess what I want them to realize is that they are a part of what I think is going to be the best team again in the state of Maryland. All right, and that this job is both vitally important, but it also is fun. It's a fun job. It can be a fun job, because what we are doing is we are helping people who have been victimized pick up the pieces, right? Folks who've their homes have been burglarized, their possessions they've worked all their lives for have been stolen, loved ones have been assaulted, killed even. And so our job is to come in after law enforcement has completed this investigation and try to find some justice for them.
Right.
Try to do some justice for them. And so that is a great calling, and it's both an important job and can be a fun job. And I think that one of the things I want them to take away is a respect that I have for the job they're doing, for the role that they play, and then also realizing that each of us have our own life outside of the office, right? One of the things, and I harken back to a lot of the things Matt Massarello did and said, because I think he was the epitome.
That's a good template to follow.
He is a great template to follow, and he laid out a great path. And one of the things he did is he went around to each office and would sit down with us and talk to us about, hey, how are you doing? Let me tell you how I'm doing. What are you seeing? Let me tell you what I'm seeing. What are your ideas? And then we would go and we would see him implementing policy based upon conversations he had with us. And what that does is draws us all together. We buy in then to the leader's vision, right? Because we know the leader cares about me. He or she respects what I have to say. I have value in this institution. I'm a part of a team. I'm a part of something bigger than just me. It's not somebody.
That's a great, great, great message. Lee, I really want to thank you for coming by today. We're running out of time.
Yep.
But this has been Billy Earl Amos here with Eastern Shore Politics and the Republican candidate, one of two Republican candidates for the state's attorney's office here in Wicomico County, Mr. Lee Britt.
Thank
Lee,
you.
thanks again.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure.